Hello and welcome to this new series for Strike Fighters 2, North Vietnam, where I'll be flying with the Vietnam People's Air Force against the meddling American forces standing in our way as we try to reunite our country with our cousins in the South. You'll find that fighting on this side of the Vietnam War, or more correctly known as the American War in Vietnam, is a much different experience than we've previously experienced flying as the Americans. On the one hand, I'll almost always be over friendly territory, so ejecting is always a safe bet. Not much chance for capture. And I'll have the protection of North Vietnam's vast anti-air defenses on my side, which will later include the feared SA-2 SAMs. But Americans will outnumber us every day. By a lot. And they have missiles. Our aircraft are old, gun-equipped day fighters with very little fuel. Soviet equipment was designed to take off, intercept, and then immediately land again. Fuel consumption will be a major focus in every mission. North Vietnam started the war with only 36 MiG-17s and an equivalent amount of pilots, so their strategy, as will be mine, was to not foolishly throw away precious aircraft or men. They tried to attack only when they had the numerical advantage, and would disengage if overwhelmed. I may fail many missions because it's better to preserve the equipment than to complete an objective. Let's move into the campaign now. We're going to create a campaign. There are 3 campaigns for North Vietnam, the first of which is the American War. This runs from 1965 to 1968 and is the opposite side of Operation Rolling Thunder. I'll be exploring several variants of the MiG-17 during this campaign. Later, in 1972, we see Madman Nixon and Dien Bien Phu of the Air. Those are opposing the linebacker operations, and I'll fly MiG-21s during that. But for now, we're starting at the beginning of the war, March 2nd, 1965. Our service is the Vietnam People's Air Force, or VPAF. For my starting aircraft, you can see I have a list of options. The J-5 was the Chinese MiG-17 built under license from the Soviet Union. They were used by the VPAF interchangeably with MiG-17s, so I'm just going to stick with the pure MiG models for this series, but just know that they are basically identical to the MiGs. 2 MiG-17 models are available for me to start with, and I'll get into the differences of those in a little bit. There's some MiG-21 models, but again I'm saving those for the linebacker operations later on down the road. So let's choose the base MiG-17 to begin our humble career. There's only one option for squadrons, that's the 921st Fighter Regiment, nicknamed Sao Zo, or Red Star. This is the only option because it was the only jet squadron in the country at the time. Campaign difficulty is on easy, and I'll tell you why. I found out that this doesn't actually affect the difficulty of the enemy, which is what I had always thought. This actually adjusts how much the player affects the outcome of the campaign. So, if it's on hard, you're the star of the show. It's very video gamey, being the most important person in a war, that you make these sweeping changes based on your actions. I don't like that, and especially here in this campaign where I'm sure that I'm going to fail a lot of missions, I don't want that affecting the campaign negatively. So, it's on easy to minimize my impact, good or bad, on the campaign, and makes me just one of many cogs in the war machine. Weapon supply is on normal, and we're going to see that we start undersupplied anyways at about 50%. Weapon supply affects how much ordnance we have on hand, as well as how often we receive replacement weapons and pilots, and that's a thing that we're going to need, because we're going to lose a lot of pilots, and we're going to need to refill those ranks. And starting date is March 2nd, 1965. We're ready to go. Let's begin. This will be our pilot for the Vietnam People's Air Force missions, and is based on a real officer. This is Nguyen Van Coc, and at 9 victories was not only the highest scoring ace in North Vietnam, but also for the entire war. He flew both MiG-17s and MiG-21s, and earned all of his kills in the 21. This fictionalized version of him will get more kills here in the game than he did in real life, especially since he was retired from the front line in 1968 and will be continuing all the way till the end of the war in 72 and maybe even beyond into the fictionalized campaigns of 1975. But his outstanding real-life record makes him the perfect pilot to represent this campaign. Also note that I filled in a call sign for him, but I'm pretty sure that Vietnam didn't use a nickname system, as it seems none of the Iron Curtain countries did. That seems like a very American tradition, and I actually don't really know how many other countries subscribe to that, the fighter jock call sign thing. There's no reference that I've seen yet of him having a nickname or call sign. If somebody out there actually knows different, I'd love to know what it is. Despite being an amazing and aggressive pilot, he's still somewhat unknown in the West. I've decided to showcase him here as both a tribute to his skill and also to share his story with more people. I'll talk more in detail on him later. But for now, let's move on to today's briefing and get down to business. Following several years of mounting aggression against the peoples of Vietnam, the United States initiates an aerial attack against the Democratic Republic of Vietnam on March 2, 1965. Although the U.S. President Lyndon Johnson claims that Operation Rolling Thunder is a restricted aerial bombardment campaign designed to pave the way towards a peace settlement, the White House clearly intends to use it to prevent the liberation of occupied South Vietnam. This campaign has but one objective: defeat the American bombing campaign against the DRV and demonstrate to the U.S. that the only route to peace in Southeast Asia is for the U.S. to withdraw all of its forces from the South unconditionally. The first flight, 921st Sao Zo Fighter Regiment, Section A, equipped with the MiG-17 Fresco and already deployed at Phuc Yen Airfield, North Vietnam, is assigned to take part in this operation. Alright, welcome to Phuc Yen Airport. We're just north of Hanoi. This is the 921st Fighter Regiment, Flight 1, Section A. It's the 2nd of March 65, and today's mission objective for our first mission is going to be to intercept an enemy flight approaching the Haiphong warehouse storage. Destroy the enemy flight before it reaches its target. Our call sign today will be Ramrod, and I apologize now for the fact that all of the call signs and the radio comms will still be in very American vernacular. I don't have any sort of voice pack for North Vietnam. I went looking, I haven't found one out there, so it is what it is. We're just going to have North Vietnamese ground controllers with Texas accents. There's nothing I can do about that. We'll be flying 4 MiG-17 Fresco A aircraft. Takeoff time will be 9:57 in the morning. We'll be intercepting around 10:08, and then we'll be landing at 10:27. Let's take a look at the loadout for today. I'm in Ramrod 1, which is a MiG-17, aircraft number 1030. Paint scheme is VPAF Silver 1 of the Vietnam People's Air Force, and the unit markings of the 921st. Now, notice that both fuel and ammo, even though they're at 100%, have very little weight to them. The fuel capacity of this aircraft was only 366 gallons. That's like half of a single centerline tank for an F4 Phantom, and that's the entire capacity for the aircraft. As for ammunition, there's only 160 23mm rounds on board. That's it, and only 40 37mm rounds. So you can see we only have a few seconds of firing in this aircraft, which is another reason why these planes were designed just to get into the intercept, fire, and then get out and get home, because they had no fuel reserves and they had no ammo reserves. The outer pylons are to equip 400-liter drop tanks, if we so chose, so we could get a little bit more fuel into the airplane if we needed to, though I'm not going to bother today. And the inner pylons support a range of small bombs or rockets or rocket pods. Now, I have read that the export version of the MiG-17 that the Soviet Union sent to Vietnam did not have any of the wiring necessary to use these inner pylons, so they sent them a fighter-only version. Whether or not this is the case, the game at least allows us to use the inner pylons with this additional ordnance, and so today I'm going to equip these S5s, which are 57mm anti-air rockets. These are rockets for interception, and I'm going to have them aboard to give them a try. Never used them before, but they'll supplement our very meager gun ammunition, so maybe be able to shoot down 1 or 2 more airplanes before we have to turn tail and run home because we're out of ammunition. That gives us a total takeoff weight today of 11,560 pounds. Compare that to the fully loaded takeoff weight of an F4 Phantom, which is over 60,000 pounds, and you can start to get an idea of how small and lightweight and nimble these fighters were compared to all these American behemoths that we're very used to, that couldn't turn their way out of a paper bag up in the sky. They were so unmaneuverable, and we can see now why these smaller, older Soviet jets were so maneuverable, because they didn't weigh anything. All of my wingmen are set up with the same weapons loadout, so let's exit out of here and move on to look at the map. Here we are looking at an overview of Southeast Asia, and it's strange to see all of the friendly blue units at the top of the map and then not be able to see all of the many units down to the south, including all of the carrier units out at Yankee Station. We see none of that here. Since we're starting a new campaign, let's take a moment to quickly run through the geopolitical situation in the region for a quick refresher. Up here at the top, including this island, is China. This area here, north of the red line, is going to be North Vietnam, south of which, along the coast, is going to be South Vietnam. Here in this area is Cambodia, and next door to that is Laos, which runs between Thailand and Vietnam. And then to the west of that is Thailand itself, where all of these blue airports are. Alright, as for our actual mission today, here's us at Phu Quyen, like I said, just north of Hanoi, just north of the Red River. Note that our squadron supply is only 47%. We have 20 aircraft. We're going to take off from Phu Quyen to the east and climb to waypoint 3 as we get the squadron together before turning south. The altitude is given here in feet. You can see it says 13,600 feet, but in the aircraft we use meters and kilometers per hour. So I'm going to climb up to 3,000 meters for this waypoint, which is actually 10,000 feet. After that, we're going to turn south and head down to the initial point and then to the interception point itself, which this says we should be at 7 minutes and 40 seconds. We're not going to drop down to the 5,900 feet that it says here. I'm going to stay at 3,000 meters so that I can use that extra altitude to dive down on our target once we identify it. After that, we will head to the south and then west to get away from any additional action before circling around to then land back at Phu Quyen. And finally, let's look at our roster before we head out. In Ramrod 1 is 2nd Lieutenant Nguyen Van Coc. My wingman will be 2nd Lieutenant Trong Hu Vien. Win Trong Giao will be the leader of the second element, and then his wingman will be Mai Hu Hiep. Now is a good time to make a note on Vietnamese naming conventions, in case you're not familiar. Vietnamese names usually consist of 3 syllables, though sometimes they will have 4. The first name is the family name, what we in Western culture would call our surname. A Vietnamese individual is referred to by shortening the name to the last syllable. So, in our pilot's example, Nguyen is his family name, and his friends would refer to him as Coc. I had Vietnamese and Cambodian friends during my time in the Navy, which is how I first learned of this. China, Korea, Cambodia, and Japan all follow this naming convention, but it's interesting to note that Thailand and Laos do not. They instead put their surnames after their given names, just like the European naming style. Alright, I know that was very long-winded, but this is the first episode in a new series, and there was a lot that I wanted to touch on and cover before we got going. That's all behind us now, so we're ready to go. We're going to head out to the tarmac, we're going to kick the tires and light the fires on our MiG-17, and we're going to blast off for our first mission over North Vietnam with the Vietnam People's Air Force. We'll see you out there. Alright, welcome to aircraft 1030 out on the runway at Phu Quyen, ready to go. We look around our cockpit here. Our poor canopy has seen some pretty rough living, apparently. there's lots of marks here on the plexiglass itself, but we can still see out well enough. There's the rest of the squadron, our wingmen waiting to taxi into position for takeoff. That is the outskirts of Hanoi. we're looking south towards the city. Before we take off, let's take a moment to familiarize ourselves with the instrument panel in this aircraft. On the far left is a gauge that we don't really use in the game, but I believe it's hydraulic pressure, and someone can correct me on that if I'm wrong. Top center is our airspeed indicator, read in kilometers per hour. Below that is the altitude indicator, read in meters and kilometers. Underneath that is our radar altimeter, which is our height specifically above the ground, also read in meters. To the right of that, at the top of the instrument panel, although obscured by our gun sight, is the artificial horizon. This takes some getting used to because in Soviet instrumentation, the ground is represented by blue, while the sky is represented by black, which is the opposite, or the inverse, of what you would normally expect to see in a Western artificial horizon. So that could lead to some real confusion if you become disoriented in an instrument condition. You could end up trying to flip the plane over the wrong way. Below that is a pretty standard slip indicator, and at the bottom is our clock. To the right of the artificial horizon is our vertical speed indicator, pretty standard, and below that is our fuel gauge, which I believe is just indicating a percent scale of 0 to 100%. I don't think that's in liters. Now, on the right side of the panel, at the top middle here, we have our horizontal situation indicator, or compass, whatever you want to call it. It's telling us the direction that the plane is actually moving in, and instead of the number card rotating, the aircraft in the center rotates, which again can be a little disorienting if you're not used to that. Underneath that is a navigation gauge giving us information to the next waypoint. At the bottom of that stack is a temperature gauge for various internal components, not super relevant to what we're doing here in the game. Finally, the last stack on the right, at the top is our RPM gauge in percent, up to 100%. The middle is our exhaust temperature gauge, and at the bottom is our fuel flow. So that's the gauge that I'll be using to set cruise power on. And then off to the far right there is some sort of electrical gauge, a voltmeter maybe, and below that is, I think, a G meter, but it's non-functional. We do have a G meter that works, and it's up just to the left of the gun sight, so that's the one we'll be looking at. Alright, now that we know what everything is, we've got American planes incoming. Let's get this interception underway. I'm going to apply full power. Our VK1 engine spooling up, giving us 6,000 pounds of thrust. No afterburner on this model. This is the base MiG-17, the original model. So no afterburner, this is just straight thrust at 100%. The later F model would give us an additional 1,400 pounds of thrust with the addition of that afterburner. Hanoi, out to our right, there's the Red River running through it. There's the Paul de Mer Bridge, crossing the Red River there downtown. And we're going to turn towards waypoint 3 and climb up to 3,000 meters. Now, the way the navigation gauge works in this plane is that it points you to the next waypoint, assuming that you're at the exact spot of the previous waypoint. So if you actually end up off course, it's not going to point you directly to where you need to go. So I'm just going to turn the HUD on here and cheat a little bit and look for my my navigation triangle and make sure that we're going the right way here. And then we'll turn over to waypoint 3. We'll turn that HUD back off. It was about there. And then we'll keep climbing up to where we need to be. So we're at 1,700 meters now. Our waypoint is at 050, which we're now heading, and we'll continue our climb up to altitude. Looking out behind us over the tailplane, we see Hanoi disappearing into the distance with the Red River running through it. Off to our right is Phuket Air Base, where we just took off from, and then off to our left is Gia Lam Airfield. And like I said, we still have the enthusiastic Texas controllers, still referring to themselves as Red Crown. Obviously that is all completely incorrect for Vietnam, but nothing I can change at the moment. If there's actually a Vietnamese voice pack out there that someone knows of, I would love if you forwarded me a link down in the comments. I was not able to find one myself, but I would definitely use it. Even if I can't understand what they're saying, I still have the subtitles, and it would definitely make it more immersive. That's Haiphong out there to our right, way in the distance. Let's see if we have... Okay, so our closest bandits are behind us, and we're going to target it. And that's actually our primary target. Those are F-105s coming in from the west. And they're still in excess of 50 miles away, but they're coming in over the mountains into the Hanoi region to try to get to the port at Haiphong, and we need to stop them. You can see those tiny air-to-air rockets on the inner pylons there. I've only got 2 of them. There's waypoint 3 reached. We're going to turn back to the south now, maintaining 3,000 meters. The rest of the Ramrod Squadron will catch up to us as I come around and should lock into position on my wing. Some confusing reports coming in from Red Crown. I don't know if they're reporting the same enemy 3 times, or if that's 3 different flights coming in. The vague, sometimes contrary instructions from the AI ground control in this game doesn't do me any favors when I'm playing as the North Vietnamese. The VPAF modeled their interception system directly on the Soviet design, known as the GCI method, or Ground Controlled Intercept. While American pilots were given wide authority to find and choose their own targets, North Vietnamese pilots were strictly managed by dedicated ground controllers who watched the battle on a radar screen. The controllers would choose the targets, maneuver the flight into position, and then issue orders to fire and when to retreat. Since the AI doesn't provide realistic information, you'll see me turning the in-game heads-up display on occasionally just to get better situational awareness, though, as usual, I'll be minimizing its use and keeping it off for most of the time. Can I also just mention real quick how nice it is to hear that sound of the MiG engine nearby and not be fearing for my life from it? Our avionics are pretty limited in this plane. We basically have an air-to-air mode and then a caged mode for our gun sight. We have one grouping of guns. We can't ungroup them. We can't fire either the 37 or 23 millimeters separately. We have those air-to-air rockets, no radar, and no radar warning receiver, either audio or visual. And we're coming up on our interception waypoint. So let's see where the nearest bad guys are. Okay, down to 25 miles now. Those Thunder Chiefs are just off to my right. Should be slightly below us. If they're down at 5,000 feet, we're up here just above 10. And so we'll be able to drop down on them and use the additional altitude for our speed. Firewalling the throttle now. Let's try to intercept them as fast as possible. We'll use up a few gallons of gas here to try to get to them early on. Alright, directly ahead now at 20 miles. They're moving closer. Alright, Red Crown is giving me instructions to an enemy flight that doesn't even exist. There's nobody at my 4 o'clock. But anyways, quick check of the HUD shows them just off to the right of my nose. So let's circle a little bit behind them. I've selected my air-to-air rockets. 8 miles now, they should be well within visual range. Turning the HUD off. And there we go, I can just see them. So, Ramrod flight. Engage those targets. Wingman, attack my target. I want everyone to swoop in and try to knock down this whole flight on the first pass. Diving in on them now, trading altitude for airspeed. Coming in right behind. Silver F-105s, this is prior to the Southeast Asia camo pattern. Right behind this thud now. Boom! Cannons right into the back of him. He's flaming, veering away. Let's use a rocket on this guy. Oh, and a direct hit! My god, that actually worked. Alright, up and over the top of these guys. We've got 2 more F-105s. Let's barrel roll down right behind this outer man here. Right behind him. Let's try to use our last air-to-air rocket on him. Right behind this dude now. Firing! Oh, right over his canopy. Well, we'll use cannons instead. Short bursts. I've knocked off... Ooh, knocked off all the bombs from him. So we'll let him go. And then we'll concentrate here on number 3, the fourth and final F-105. We'll remind Ramrod 2 to attack my target. And then hopefully they'll take care of that straggler, if he's still flying, that went out to the right. We'll come up right under this guy and we'll fire. Pieces flying off of him. Probably getting ingested by the intake right into my VK1 engine. Where'd he go? There he is. Is he... Oh, he's spinning over. He's spinning over and he's going right down. And what do they call F-105s? Thud. We have another Thunder Chief. Looks like maybe a second flight of F-105s heading into Haiphong. We've dispatched the first one so quickly, and Red Crown has told us that we've accomplished our mission, so we could leave, but we're on a roll. Let's engage the second flight of F-105s and try to knock them down too, or as many of them as we can. It's going to be a little bit harder to catch these guys because now I don't have the altitude to dive down on them. Although, once I get behind them, I'll dive down here, gain some airspeed to come up under them, and then pull up and try to fire into their bellies before I slow down too much. So, trying to catch up with these guys. We're coming up right on the outskirts of Haiphong, so they're probably going to launch their bombs soon. You can see there's the port just off the left of my nose. Oh, that's disconcerting. We've got bandits off to my right. That may be a fighter escort, finally. Pretty close. I don't see anything. Flak lighting up the sky in front of these F-105s now. Having a real hard time catching them. I'm firewalled, but with no afterburner in this bare-bones MiG-17, I'm not catching up very quickly. Alright, I'm telling everyone to rejoin on me and to cover with me. So if there are any enemy fighters around, they will spot them and then engage them. Let's try diving down again to gain some more speed. Uh-oh. Oh, bombs hitting right in the middle of the port, taking out several ships, some warehouses. I've been too late to stop them, but that doesn't mean that I can't knock them down on their way out of here. Getting really close now. They look real close, but the 23 and 37 millimeters have severe bullet drop, and so it's really hard to hit anything that's more than a couple of thousand feet away with any accuracy. Conserving ammo by just firing single rounds, but it's kind of hard to tell where they're going to go. Let's try this guy. There we go. Just clipped the bottom of him. Let's put a couple more into him. Pieces are flying off. Here's a much closer one wandering in front of me. Down he goes. Let's give this guy... Ah, missed. It's a waste. Oh! Ingesting more debris right into the engine. Probably have terrible FOD damage now. Luckily the engine's still running. There's one, there's an F-105. Burning as he spirals slowly down into the ocean. Let's see, where'd these other guys go? We got at least 2 more F-105s, if not 3 still flying. There we go, impact. Here's another bogey. We've got the altitude on him now, so we can dive right down on him and get behind him. I've got to almost be out of ammo, too. This has been a lot of shooting. I'm surprised the guns are still firing, honestly. Ooh, there we go. Clipped him. Oh, I missed with the rest. Oh, there we go. That's it. I'm out of ammo. That was the last handful of rounds from the 23mm, and they took out this Thunder Chief's left wing, and he's spiraling down to his death. Canopy's open. The pilot punched out, but that F-105 is toast. And now I am out of ammo, and we've allowed these F-105s to drag us way out over the ocean. If we don't turn around soon, we may accidentally end up within firing range of the actual Red Crown, which of course are the picket ships stationed nearby. I don't want them firing any surface-to-air missiles at me. So let's turn around, let's head back inland, and let's get the rest of the squadron formed up on me. Oh, and we've got F-8 Crusaders high and to the right. And that could be a real problem. But it says they're heading northeast, so I think maybe they're at the end of their patrol and heading back out to the ocean. Nguyen Van Coc was born in 1943 in the province of Bac Giang, Vietnam, which is near Hanoi. His father was a chairman in the Viet Minh, which was the group run by Ho Chi Minh fighting for the independence of Vietnam. The group started as an anti-French organization, but during World War II, the Viet Minh resisted the Japanese occupation as well, and they were well funded and supplied by the US and China. When the war ended, though, the Viet Minh was no longer convenient to the Allies as France reclaimed the country as their colony with the blessing of the United States and others. When Coc was only 3, the French colonial authorities arrested and killed his father and his uncle, both prominent members of the Viet Minh. Fleeing the area with his mother, Nguyen Van Coc grew up in what would become South Vietnam in 1954 when he was 11. They lived near Chu Lai Air Base, a few miles south of Da Nang, and he grew to love aviation as he watched French aircraft coming in and out of the base. As Coc grew older, the constant sights of the French military also began to fan the flames of resentment towards a foreign power occupying his country. As a teenager, he returned to North Vietnam to attend a secondary school in Bac Giang, and in 1961, at 18 years old, he signed up to join the Vietnam People's Air Force. He learned to fly at Cat Bai Air Base in Haiphong. He then traveled to the Soviet Union for the next 4 years to undergo pilot training in the MiG-17. Of 120 trainees sent to the program, Nguyen Van Coc was only one of 7 pilots to graduate. He returned to North Vietnam and was assigned to the 921st Fighter Regiment at Phu Quien Air Base. His skill in the air was already noted, though, and almost immediately he was hand-picked to return to the Soviet Union for conversion training to the MiG-21. Coc returned to the 921st and began operationally flying as a MiG-17 pilot in December of 1965. 5 months later, the first MiG-21s were delivered to North Vietnam in April of 1966, and Coc was upgraded to the type as soon as they were assembled. He participated in GCI attack runs on F-105 flights, though didn't score any kills yet. Even simply disrupting the attack and causing the F-105s to jettison their bomb loads was considered a success to the VPAF, so Coc was still contributing. On January 2, 1967, though, Operation Bolo was launched, and a flight of F-4s pretending to be F-105s ambushed Nguyen Van Coc's MiG-21s and shot down all 7 of the Vietnamese fighters, including Coc himself. All the VPAF pilots ejected safely and returned to their fighter regiment, but now Coc was more determined than ever to bring payback to the Americans. Coc's kill streak began on April 30th, 1967, when he shot down an F-105. Through the rest of 1967 and 68, he would take down a total of 9 American aircraft, totaling 4 F-105s, 3 F-4 Phantoms, an F-102 Delta Dagger, and 2 AQM-34 Firebee unmanned drones. One of the F-4s was off the USS Enterprise from VF-92. While he claimed his final kill as a Firebee drone, evidence now suggests that it may actually have been an OV-10 Bronco forward air controller aircraft. With the end of Operation Rolling Thunder in 1968, and with 9 kills to his name, Nguyen Van Coc was retired from active combat and reassigned in a training role in order to pass on his skills and valuable combat experience to the next generation of young pilots. His role shifted as he now became more important to the war as a symbol and a training officer. In 1969, he was awarded medals for all 9 of his kills. He rose through the ranks of the Vietnam People's Air Force, eventually reaching the rank of Chief Inspector. He retired in 2002 at the age of 59. Nguyen Van Coc earned his place as one of the leading jet fighter pilots in history for his skills and tenacity in bringing down 9 aircraft against an enemy that not only outnumbered him, but was technologically advanced. All of his kills were achieved using the R-3S heat-seeking missile, and 6 of his kills were downed while he was flying as a wingman. What? That's one of my wingmates calling out an enemy. Is that for real? Or is that a glitch? Ramrod 2, cover me, just in case. Okay, somebody spotted him. That's for real. We have enemy fighters in the area. Element 1, engage air, please. I am useless. I have no weapons, but Dong Suong Airfield is directly ahead of me, so I'm going to keep on going straight while Element 2 veers off to attack this guy, and if I can get over the airfield, maybe you can drag him right over some AAA. Targeting nearest enemy. There we go, F-8 Crusader. Right behind me somewhere. Oh, he's right behind me. He's right behind me and Ramrod 2. Ramrod 2, break! Whoa, and a missile inbound. Wow, that was extremely fortuitous. That was really good timing. I had him break just before that Crusader fired a missile. Okay, everybody, attack this guy. There's 2, doing a little bit of scissors crossing with him. Man, this Crusader's right on our ass. Puffs of smoke coming up from Dong Suong Airfield. There he is. He's circling around. 3 and 4 need to engage this guy. Toot sweet. I am rapidly running out of fuel. Also, just look at my fuel gauge. It's dropping like a stone. There's Fujian just ahead of me on the other side of the city, but let's hang out here for a minute. Maybe we can get this guy shot down by anti-air fire. Oh man, it looks like he's pointing right at me. Is he gonna fire a missile? God, I feel like he's gonna shoot. Get this guy, please. Oh man! Missile incoming! Braking. Oh, more precious fuel. Getting burned. There it goes! Sidewinder right by the canopy. I'm on fumes now for fuel, and I can't even shoot at this guy. All I can do, as we pass right close to each other, is to try to distract him so that one of my wingmen can take him out. There we go. I just heard a MiG go by, so people are on him. Oh, and someone's firing guns at him. Come on, hit him! Damn it. He's outmaneuvering my guys. Oh, so low on fuel. Come on, if we just finish him off, then we can go home. We can cross the river and get back to Fujian. This can be over in a minute. Alright, he's high and to my left. Let's remind everyone again to please attack this target. We're right over this airfield. What was that? Shit, did I just fucking get hit? Wait a minute. Oh my god, I just took... Whoa, there's another Crusader right behind me. And, oh no, not only do I have bullet holes, I am spilling fuel. The few gallons that I had left are now dropping out the back. And there we go. My fuel tank is empty. We just flamed out. I am now dead sticking it. Oh. Alright, I guess we're gonna make an emergency landing here at Dong Suong. This is a pretty long runway, so let's cut a short final here and get down. Oh my god, he almost hit me again. You son of a bitch. Brakes are out, gear is out, we're at 250 kilometers per hour. Stall speed's 200. So we're just gonna come down and set it nice and gentle. And then we'll just roll to a stop. And touchdown. And oh, what's happening? Oh my god! He blew off my landing gear. I'm only on one wheel. As we're skidding off to the side of the runway. Okay. I'm pausing it. Because here's the deal. I am surprised that, one, I didn't already explode, because Strike Fighters 2 does not handle crash landing with any grace. If you just touch the ground, your aircraft explodes. And as you can see, when that Crusader hit me, he blew off not only my nose wheel, but the left main landing gear, which I did not realize. Should have looked at my landing gear lights for confirmation, but not like I had much of a choice either way. So I touched down and surprisingly did not explode, but I'm afraid... this has never happened to me before, so I'm afraid that as the speed comes down, that maybe the game is going to register a crash and the plane's just going to explode, and I don't want that to happen. So I think that we can all agree that this plane was skidding to a stop within the next 100 feet or so, and I would have made a safe, successful crash landing. So I'm not going to unpause the game. We're just going to end it here. before the game randomly explodes the aircraft and kills me, and then I have to refly the mission. So we successfully survived a near-death experience, touched down at Dong Suan Airfield, and we'll see you in the debriefing. Okay, here we go. Our mission objective was to intercept an enemy flight approaching the Haiphong warehouse storage. We were to destroy that enemy flight before it reaches its target, which we did. We had a total flight time of 25 minutes and 21 seconds. 4 primary targets were destroyed, with 3 additional enemy aircraft also being destroyed. 1 MiG-17 was damaged, which was mine, but not lost. Rating was an outstanding success for a score of 2,700 points. Lieutenant Van Coc is awarded the Warrior Medal. Take a look at the stats here. I fired every round I had on board. That's 40 rounds from the 37mm cannon and 160 rounds from the 23mm cannon. I got 6 kills and 1 kill with the air-to-air rocket, those S5s, which was pretty amazing. Second Lieutenant Nguyen did not fire anything, even though I had 2 F8 Crusaders all over my ass for those last, I don't know, 5 minutes. He didn't fire anything, and that's very disappointing. Lieutenant Gao, he fired a bunch of rounds but didn't hit anything, and also Second Lieutenant Heap didn't fire anything, so that's a little disappointing that the AI was being very reluctant to engage. Whatever, everyone's still a rookie at this point. As the war goes on, everyone's flying ability will increase, so we'll maybe see better performance at some point in the future. Alright, let's just take a quick look at the log to see what almost shot me down. I mean, it's that F8 Crusader, but let's just look here. F8 Crusader fired 20mm cannon at Nguyen Van Coc, and I was hit by that. Blew off most of my landing gear, unbeknownst to me, forcing that dead stick crash landing at the friendly airfield. Alright, to the roster now. Nguyen Van Coc, 1 combat mission, 7 air-to-air kills. I just made like 90% of the real-world kills of the actual Nguyen Van Coc in 1 mission. 7. Unbelievable. I mean, I guess that's why I'm being awarded this, what I assume to be Vietnam's top medal. A little more disappointing is the fact that I was the only one that did anything. The rest of my guys turned in a lackluster performance this time. Other than that minor hiccup at the end, this was a great mission. I guess the good thing about getting sort of shot down like that is that all of that debris that my poor engine probably ingested from me firing on enemy aircraft too close, now no one will be able to tell the difference between that and all of the damage from the bullets. But what can you do? I got the job done. Everyone survived. My MiG was only slightly damaged, so we'll get that repaired and we'll fly it back to Fukien. Let's take a look at this Warrior Medal that I've been awarded before we go, shall we? Decree of the Council of State of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam in Hanoi. The President, on behalf of the people, hereby presents the Democratic Republic's Warrior Medal to Junior Lieutenant Nguyen Van Coc, Vietnam People's Air Force, for service as set forth in the following citation. For revolutionary courage in aerial combat over Haiphong warehouse storage, North Vietnam on 02 March 1965. On this date, Junior Lieutenant Nguyen Van Coc displayed superb airmanship and determination to successfully complete his assigned mission in the face of heavy enemy fire. Alright, that's going to wrap it up for episode 1 of this new series, Flying with the North Vietnamese Air Force. I hope you liked this one. This series is going to be predominantly, if not exclusively, all air combat, and a lot of it is going to be close-in knife fighting with guns only, since we're not even going to have missiles available to us until I fly the MiG-21, and that's not until 1972. So this is going to be the MiG-17 show up through 68. So I hope that excites people, and I hope to see you back for episode 2 as we continue to fly and fight over the skies of Vietnam. We'll see you then.